Hello class, it's time for us to begin lesson 14. I know we started it a little bit last week and we went through the vocabulary words, but we just want to reiterate the pronunciation. So if you'll turn in your books to page 150, and those are the vocabulary words for lesson 14. Okay, you ready? Page 150, and I'm going to go through them like I did last time in varying speeds, and I'm going to do my famous little directional gestures to indicate the accent. Okay, and if you want to do those along with me in the privacy of your own home, feel free to do that. That actually does help. Okay, the first word is access. 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 All right. The second word is associate. 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 This word, there's a little variation in this word. It depends on the usage of it as to how you're going to pronounce it. There's a different little shade of vowel that I'm going to talk about. In the sentence here it says, many people associate lobsters with Maine. So you hear that's pronounced associate. Many people associate lobsters with Maine. Okay? Then if you'll look down here, you'll see the last sentence for associate. It says, my father discussed the offer of a job in Chicago with his associate at work. Okay, there's a little varying shade there. Associate. Associate at work. With his associate. You wouldn't say with his associate at work. So that's a little different. Let me read the sentences again. Many people associate lobsters with Maine. My father discussed the offer of a job in Chicago with his associate at work. Again, that's just a little tiny nuance. If you don't get it this time around, that's fine, but just something I want you to be aware of. Just a little shade in that vowel. And it is a tiny nuance, but it can make a difference when it comes to intelligibility. Okay. The next word is boisterous. 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 That's a little bit of a vowel digraph there. Boy. Boisterous. Okay. The next word is brilliant. 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 Okay? The next word is decade. 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 Okay, that's not too hard. The next word is delicate. 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 Even though there's a very strong accent on the first syllable, delicate, you still have to pronounce all of the syllables, even that final T at the end. I know sometimes we tend to drop the T off a little bit, and it almost sounds like delicate, but you still need to pronounce that final syllable, but you just don't give it the same amount of stress as the accented syllable. Okay? Delicate. Delicate. Make sure you get that final T on there. The next word is employ. 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 Okay? The next one is idle. 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 Okay? The next one is illuminate. 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 Okay? The next word is provide. 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 The next word is require. 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 require, require, require. All right? And the next word is taunt. Taunt. Just one syllable. Taunt. 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 So it's just like almost like hot taunt, not taunt, 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 taunt. See if I can get the right shade. I know it's just one syllable, but there's some shading going on. I want you to hear taunt, taunt, aunt, aunt, taunt, taunt, taunt. Okay? The next word is tolerant, 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 tolerant. Okay? Then we have transform, 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 or transformation, 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 transformation. You see that bolded word underneath there. Okay, and our last word is wilderness, 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 wilderness. Okay? Well, that's the vocabulary words that we just previewed those, and those are going to be scattered throughout the story on page 157. So turn in your books to page 157, and the title of the reading passage is The Wizard of Menlo Park. Okay? So what I'm going to do, I've numbered all of my paragraphs, and I'm going to read paragraph 1 in a very slow speed so that you all can understand. Then I'm going to point out some maybe difficult words or words that I think may give you a little bit of a struggle, and we'll go over those. And then I'll repeat that paragraph in a normal reading pace. Okay? Let's start with paragraph 1. And the title, though, is The Wizard of Menlo Park. The Wizard of Menlo Park. Okay? Go. Paragraph 1. Like other cities and towns in the late 1800s, New York City was a gloomy place at night. Let me slow that down for you. Okay? Like other cities and towns in the late 1800s, New York City was a gloomy place at night. Streets were lit by flickering gas lights, if they were lit at all. Oil lamps or candles were all that people had to illuminate their homes. Thomas Edison had a better idea. In 1881, he built the world's first electric power station in Manhattan. He helped change New York into the brilliantly lit city we know today. Okay? In the first sentence, we have the words like other cities and towns. I wanted to point out the word town or towns. That's one of our vowel digraphs. So that would be towns, towns. And then in the second sentence there, where it starts oil lamps and candles, that's pronounced candles. Candles, it's the plural of candle. Candles, candle, you know, something that you light so you can see your way. Candles. And in the third sentence, it starts off with, in 1881, he built. So the word is built. Built the world's first electric power station. Built. Okay? Now let me read this at a normal pace. Like other cities and towns in the late 1800s, New York City was a gloomy place at night. Streets were lit by flickering gas lights, if they were lit at all. Oil lamps or candles were all that people had to illuminate their homes. Thomas Edison had a better idea. In 1881, he built the world's first electric power station in Manhattan. He helped change New York into the brilliantly lit city we know today. Okay? Now we're going to move on to paragraph number 2. And I'll take this at a slower pace. Edison was born in Ohio in 1847. When he was a small child, his family moved to Port Huron, Michigan. An attack of scarlet fever left him in delicate health. This worried his parents. They did not allow him to join in the boisterous games played at his school. The other children were not very tolerant of someone who stood apart from the rest, and young Edison had to suffer their taunts. His mother, who was a teacher, decided to take him out of school. She taught him at home, where he learned quickly. He asked many questions and liked to experiment on his own to find answers. Okay. In this paragraph, we do have several of our vocabulary words that we just went through: delicate, boisterous, tolerant, and taunts. But there are a few more words I wanted to point out. In the second sentence, right after delicate health, it says this worried his parents. Worried. Worried is how that is pronounced. This worried his parents. Okay? Then moving on, it says they did not allow. That's one of our vowel diagraphs that we had talked about several weeks ago. Allow. They did not allow. Okay? And then the very last sentence, well, second to the last sentence, where it says she taught him at home. She taught. That rhymes with taunt. Taught and taunt. But you can see taunt right above it, how it's spelled Taunts. And then you see taught almost right below it, taught. But there's a G in there spelled a little bit differently. We have one of those silent consonants. So that's pronounced taught. That's to teach. Taught. Okay. She taught him at home, where he learned quickly. And that's one syllable, learned. Not learned, but learned. Okay. And then the last sentence, he asked. 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 Not asked, but asked. Okay? All right, now I'm going to read this at a normal pace. Edison was born in Ohio in 1847. When he was a small child, his family moved to Port Huron, Michigan. An attack of scarlet fever left him in delicate health. This worried his parents. They did not allow him to join in the boisterous games played at his school. The other children were not very tolerant of someone who stood apart from the rest, and young Edison had to suffer their taunts. His mother, who was a teacher, decided to take him out of school. She taught him at home, where he learned quickly. He asked many questions and liked to experiment on his own to find answers. Okay? All right, paragraph number 3. At that time, much of Michigan was a wilderness, but the railroad was transforming America by making even the most remote places accessible to the rest of the country. When the railroad came to Port Huron, it provided Edison with his first job. At the age of 12, he was given permission to sell newspapers and candy on the train that ran between his hometown and Detroit. He even printed his own newspaper, which he sold for 3 cents a copy. Okay? Our vocabulary words here are wilderness, transforming, accessible, and provided. Okay? Just a few words I wanted to point out to you. In the second sentence, after the word wilderness, we see the word railroad. But the railroad, okay, that's what the train drives on, drives down the railroad tracks, railroad. We have a double vowel digraph there, don't we? Rail.